Mary is often remembered simply as the mother of Jesus. But her story reaches far deeper than a single title can express. She stands as one of the most powerful symbols of faith in human history, a young woman whose courage, humility, and devotion shaped the course of a spiritual tradition followed by billions. In a world marked by uncertainty and fear, Mary's quiet strength continues to inspire those searching for meaning, direction, and a deeper connection to the divine. Her journey reminds us that greatness can arise from unexpected places, and that an ordinary life can become extraordinary when guided by purpose and conviction. In this video, we step beyond familiar images and explore the richer, more profound narrative of Mary's life, her lineage, her calling, her trials, and her enduring legacy. We uncover how her choices, made with unwavering trust, transformed her into a central figure in Christian theology and a timeless symbol of hope. Whether you come from a background of faith or simply love historical stories of resilience, Mary's life offers insights that still resonate today. If you find value in stories that illuminate history, inspire reflection, and deepen your understanding of the past, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue bringing these meaningful narratives to life, and it ensures you won't miss the next chapter as we explore more extraordinary figures and moments from history. Let us begin this journey into the remarkable life of Mary. Although Mary's early life and her role in the birth and ministry of Jesus are well known, the period after the resurrection opens into a quiet and intriguing silence. This silence is not accidental. It forms a kind of sacred space that invites contemplation. As the story progresses from the breathtaking events of the crucifixion and the resurrection, the narrative attention in Scripture shifts toward the growing community of believers, the spread of the message, and the emerging leadership of the apostles. Yet Mary, who had been pivotal at every turning point, moves almost completely into the background. This absence feels deliberate, as if the early Christian writers wanted her final chapters to remain hidden within the folds of mystery, allowing her life to be understood not merely through events, but through the spiritual resonance she carried. Despite the scarcity of recorded details, the threads we do have allow us to imagine a deeply human and profoundly meaningful final journey. After witnessing the resurrection, Mary would have lived among a community facing both hope and uncertainty. She had already endured the deepest grief a mother can experience, and then witnessed a moment of divine transformation that reshaped human history. Her presence among the early believers must have offered quiet comfort, especially to those who struggled to understand their new purpose after Jesus' departure. Tradition holds that she remained close to John, the beloved disciple to whom Jesus entrusted her, forming a bond rooted in both love and shared responsibility. Though Scripture is silent, early Christian communities preserved memories and traditions that hint at Mary's final years. Some believe she lived in Jerusalem, near the places that had defined her life. Others claimed she traveled to Ephesus with John, finding a peaceful refuge far from the turmoil of the city where her son had suffered. In each version, Mary becomes a symbol of continuity, a living link between the earthly ministry of Jesus and the growing movement that carried his message forward. Her death, too, is wrapped in reverent mystery, rather than a clear historical description. The stories surrounding her passing read more like reflections of how deeply she was cherished. Early believers did not focus on physical details but on the spiritual meaning of her departure. They saw her not as a figure swallowed by death, but as someone whose earthly journey simply gave way to a different kind of presence, one shaped by peace, fulfillment, and the quiet dignity that had marked her entire life. This way of remembering her reflects the profound respect the early Christian world held for her, preserving her final moments as something too sacred, too intimate, to be described in ordinary words. The absence of concrete details does not diminish her significance. Instead, it elevates her into a timeless figure whose influence transcends biography. Her story begins in humble surroundings, rises to a moment of divine calling, flows through trials that tested her strength, and then fades gently into the realm of mystery. This arc allows her legacy to be shaped not only by what is known but also by what is sensed: faith, endurance, compassion, and a life guided by unwavering trust. In that silence surrounding her final years, countless believers across generations have found space to reflect on her journey, to imagine her wisdom, and to feel the quiet but enduring impact of a woman who shaped history not through power or public acclaim, but through depth of spirit. Gabriel's arrival in Nazareth unfolds like the quiet turning of a page that would redirect the entire story of humanity. And in the broader tapestry of Mary's life it stands as the moment where her inner strength, so often described but rarely fully grasped, steps into the light. She is still young, still living in the rhythms of an ordinary village, when the divine message breaks into her world. Yet when she hears the angel's words startling, impossible, world-shifting, her response is not fear that overwhelms her nor doubt that silences her, but a composed willingness shaped by a lifetime attuned to faith. This scene does not stand apart from the mysteries that later surround her final years. Instead, it reveals the quiet pattern that defines her entire journey. She acts from trust, even when she does not understand the path laid before her. In accepting the message, Mary becomes a hinge between what humanity had been and what it could become. Her words are not merely a personal commitment. They echo across generations, forming a deliberate contrast with the ancient story of Eve, where Eve steps toward desire that leads to separation. Mary steps toward surrender that leads to restoration. This is not a condemnation of the old tale, but a renewal of it, a way of showing how the human story, fractured and wandering, is offered a new direction through one woman's courage. Her yes becomes the quiet cord that holds together the unfolding narrative, linking the awe of the angelic announcement to the near silence surrounding her final days. Even as Scripture offers only glimpses of her later life, the shape of her character established in that first encounter becomes the thread that makes those missing years feel purposeful rather than empty. The same steadiness that allowed her to stand before Gabriel becomes the steadiness that carries her through moments of joy, uncertainty, and eventual mystery. Her obedience is not passive, it is active, thoughtful, and deeply rooted in her understanding of the divine presence woven into the ordinary. By the time her story fades from the written record, the reader is left with the sense that her final chapter is not lost but intentionally veiled, inviting reflection on how a single act of trust reverberates through history. In this way, Gabriel's announcement is not just the beginning of Jesus' story, it is the foundation of Mary's entire legacy. A legacy defined by a decision that continues to illuminate the faith of countless generations. Historical context suggests Mary was likely in her early teens when the angel appeared, a detail that reshapes the scene in Nazareth with a new sense of depth and humanity. In the ancient world, such an age marked the transition from childhood to adulthood. Yet even within that cultural frame, her youth stands out as something remarkable. Not in the sense of fragility, but in the clarity of her spiritual confidence. When the angel's message interrupted the familiar rhythm of her daily life, she was not yet burdened by long years of personal ambition or hardened by disappointment. Instead, her heart was still shaped by a simplicity that allowed faith to thrive without hesitation. This does not diminish her courage, if anything, it magnifies it. A girl asked to bear a responsibility beyond imagination does not recoil but steps forward with the calm acceptance of one who has already learned that trust is stronger than fear. Her youth becomes a lens through which all later moments of her story gain color. The same young girl who listens to Gabriel's words with steady composure grows into the woman who navigates circumstances far beyond the expected path of village life. The journey to Bethlehem, the flight into Egypt, the quiet years in Nazareth, and the sorrow that shadows her steps near the end of Jesus' life all reflect that same early strength. It is easy to imagine that her courage was formed in an instant, But more likely it was the flowering of a character long shaped by contemplation, by a family rooted in faith, and by a personal openness to the divine that allowed her to recognize something extraordinary when it finally appeared. Her age underscores how extraordinary this recognition truly was. Many older and wiser figures in the sacred narratives hesitated or questioned. Yet she responded with clarity that transformed her from an obscure village girl into a central figure in a story that would echo throughout centuries. Her readiness does not suggest she fully understood the path ahead. What she accepted was not a detailed explanation but a call, and that distinction is essential. Accepting an invitation without knowing the cost or the destination requires a maturity that cannot be measured by years alone. It speaks to an interior life far deeper than her age suggests. A quiet spiritual discipline that prepared her long before she realized she was being prepared. The young Mary becomes a portrait of someone whose faith was not theoretical but lived, shaped by small daily acts of trust that laid the groundwork for one great moment of surrender. As the narrative of her later years fades into mystery, this early scene becomes even more significant. It explains how she moves through events that would unsettle even the most steadfast hearts, maintaining a quiet strength that seems to draw from the same well of confidence revealed during the Annunciation. The traces left in Scripture show a woman who continues to reflect, question, and remain present, allowing her early courage to mature into a lifelong pattern of resilience and contemplation. Her youth at the moment of the angel's arrival does not reduce her to a symbol of innocence, but elevates her as a figure whose readiness surpasses expectation. It becomes the seed of her legacy, shaping the way her story is told and remembered, weaving together the unseen years and the well-known moments into a unified portrait of unwavering faith. Her presence at the crucifixion stands as the most profound continuation of the courage first revealed in Nazareth, completing a narrative thread woven from the moment she accepted the angel's message. The young girl who once listened to Gabriel's startling words with steady composure eventually becomes the woman who walks beside her son through the darkest hours of his life, carrying a grief that does not break her but deepens the very strength that has defined her journey. Standing at the foot of the cross is not a passive act. It is the culmination of decades shaped by trust, contemplation, and a willingness to follow a path she never fully understood, yet never abandoned. She remains present when others flee, rooted in the same quiet bravery that once allowed her to say yes to a future she could not foresee. In this moment, her devotion becomes more than maternal instinct. It becomes a testament to a heart capable of holding both love and sorrow without collapsing under their weight. The image of her beside the cross gains even more meaning when viewed alongside the earlier mysteries of her life. The girl barely in her teens who agreed to the divine plan, the woman who pondered the words spoken about her son, the mother who kept faith through his hidden years, all these versions of Mary converge in the stillness of that final vigil. Her sorrow does not erase the strength she has carried from the very beginning. Instead, it reveals how deeply that strength runs. She does not demand explanation, nor does she retreat into silence. She stands, bearing witness, offering a presence that holds together memory, prophecy, and love. In doing, she embodies the same unwavering spirit that once allowed her to accept a destiny far beyond the boundaries of her village life. Her resilience in this moment is not detached or stoic. It is the resilience of someone who understands that fidelity is not measured only in joy, but also in the willingness to remain when everything seems lost. This fidelity echoes the courage of her early promise, yet it is shaped by years of experience, years marked by migration, uncertainty, ordinary labor, and the gradual realization that her son's path would always move towards something she could not protect him from. The steady presence she offers at the crucifixion becomes a mirror to her earlier acceptance, showing how her faith has matured, deepened, and taken root in a way that sustains her through unimaginable heartbreak. It is a presence that affirms her role not only as a mother, but as a witness to the unfolding of a story she helped initiate through her own act of trust. The quiet power of Mary at the cross also binds together the mystery of her later years, which remain largely unwritten. The same woman who once disappeared into the silence of history after the resurrection is the woman whose strength is revealed so vividly in this final scene. Her role here suggests that her hidden years were not empty but shaped by reflection and a growing understanding of her place within a divine narrative that extended far beyond her lifetime. Her resilience at the crucifixion becomes the lens through which her entire life can be understood, a life marked by decisions that ripple through time, shaped by a faith that withstands both wonder and sorrow. Through this moment, her story reaches a depth that unites the angelic announcement, her youthful courage, the mystery of her later years, and the profound devotion that defines her legacy. When Jesus spoke the words, "Behold your mother," the moment unfolded not merely as a gesture of compassion toward a grieving parent, but as a final revelation of Mary's place within the unfolding spiritual story that began with the angel's visit in Nazareth. This declaration, offered in the midst of suffering, extends the quiet strength she had shown throughout her life into a new dimension, transforming her role from the mother who nurtured one child to a figure whose care would symbolically embrace all who would follow the path her son had set. The scene at the cross becomes the natural continuation of every step she had taken before, from her youthful acceptance of the divine message to her courageous presence during the crucifixion. Here, her personal identity widens into something that touches the entire community of believers, not through authority, but through a form of spiritual motherhood grounded in compassion, endurance, and unwavering faith. The weight of these words gains meaning when placed beside the earlier mysteries that shaped Mary's life. She had already shown that her courage was not confined to a single moment of acceptance, but grew with each unfolding event through the uncertainty of early motherhood, the hidden years of Jesus' life, the quiet contemplation of prophecy, and the painful realities that followed. When Jesus entrusts her to the beloved disciple, it is not a sudden elevation of her role, but a recognition of what she has already become through decades of silent fidelity. The girl who once said yes to a future unknown is now given a mission that extends far beyond her own lifetime, inviting her to embody a presence of care and guidance for those who would wrestle with the same mysteries she herself had lived through. This moment also gathers together the threads of her relationship with Jesus, showing a bond that has matured into mutual trust. The mother who once held him in her arms now stands before him, offering strength in his final hour, and he answers her devotion with a gift that reflects both tenderness and purpose. By entrusting her to the disciple and the disciple to her, he creates a relationship that echoes the unity he sought to build in his teachings. Mary's new role is not defined by instruction or command, but by presence, by the same compassionate endurance that allowed her to witness both the joys and the sorrows of his journey without turning away. Her motherhood becomes a model that reflects the kind of community he envisioned, one held together by love, responsibility, and shared faith. As the narrative of her later life fades into obscurity, this moment offers a key to understanding the significance of the years that remain unrecorded. The silence surrounding her final days does not diminish her importance, but suggests a life lived in quiet dedication, continuing the spiritual role given to her on the cross. Her maternal presence becomes a living thread that binds the earliest community together, not through dramatic acts, but through the steady influence of someone who had witnessed the full arc of Jesus' mission. Her story, beginning with youthful courage and culminating in this symbolic act of inclusion, becomes a unified portrait of faith that endures, transforms, and extends beyond the limitations of time. In these final words spoken to her, Mary's legacy becomes not just a narrative within history, but an enduring presence within the spiritual imagination of countless generations. The presence of other women named Mary near the cross adds another layer of depth to the unfolding story, revealing that the final hours of Jesus' life were witnessed not only by his mother and the beloved disciple, but also by a small circle of devoted followers whose lives had intertwined with his family long before that moment. Among them stands Mary of Clopas, a figure whose identity has stirred countless discussions, yet whose appearance in this scene suggests bonds of kinship and shared faith that reach back into the fabric of early Jewish family networks. Her presence, alongside Mary Magdalene and the mother of Jesus, illuminates a quiet but resilient community of women who had supported, followed, and believed in Jesus throughout his ministry. Their gathering at the foot of the cross reflects not only personal loyalty, but the emergence of a broader spiritual family, shaped by shared experiences and deepening trust. When viewed in the context of Mary's life, this cluster of devoted women reinforces the sense that she was never isolated on her journey. From the earliest days in Nazareth, through the challenges of raising a child whose destiny carried mysteries beyond human understanding, Mary lived within a network of relatives, neighbors, and companions who helped shape the environment in which Jesus grew. The appearance of Mary of Clopas near the cross suggests that familial ties may have stretched far beyond what the scriptures explicitly describe, hinting at connections through Joseph's lineage or extended kin groups common in Jewish communities of the time. These relationships, though only briefly mentioned, help complete the picture of a family and a faith community that walk together through uncertainty, hope, and suffering, united by bonds stronger than circumstance. This moment also deepens the significance of Jesus entrusting his mother to the beloved disciple, for it occurs within a circle already rich in familial and communal ties. The group of women standing together forms a quiet testament to the continuity and strength of early discipleship, anchored not in authority but in steadfast presence. Their willingness to remain near the cross, even as others fled, mirrors Mary's own lifelong courage and gives shape to the community that would continue to grow after the resurrection. The intertwining of their lives with hers reflects a pattern of shared devotion that had been forming long before this sorrowful hour, a pattern shaped by shared meals, shared travels, and shared faith in a message that had transformed each of them in different ways. Mary's role within this small gathering highlights how her story seamlessly blends personal experience with communal identity. She is not merely the central figure of sorrow or devotion. She stands among others who, in their own ways, reflect aspects of her faith and resilience. Their presence confirms that her influence extended quietly through relationships that nurtured and sustained the earliest Christian communities, even before her symbolic role was affirmed by Jesus' words on the cross. The solidarity of these women becomes a mirror of the spiritual motherhood she would later be seen to embody, a role not defined by instruction but by lived example and unwavering commitment. As her later years fade into the silence of history, this moment at the cross framed by the companions who stood beside her offers one of the clearest glimpses into the broader world she inhabited. It hints at the hidden network of support, kinship, and shared mission that surrounded her both before and after the crucifixion. Within this network, Mary's life appears not as a solitary path, but as one deeply interwoven with others who recognized the same truth she embraced in her youth. The gathering of these women becomes a testament to a legacy shaped by connection, endurance, and faith, forming a bridge between her early courage and the enduring spiritual presence her story would inspire for generations to come. The story of Mary finds its quiet but powerful conclusion in the recognition that her life, woven through ordinary days and extraordinary moments, stands at the intersection of history, prophecy, and faith. The ancient claim that both Mary and Joseph descend from King David does more than provide a genealogical note. It anchors Jesus within a lineage long associated with hope, restoration, and divine promise. For generations, people had looked toward the house of David for the fulfillment of a covenant that stretched back through prophets and kings. In Mary, that expectation becomes something deeply personal and profoundly human. Her lineage does not elevate her above others, but reveals how the divine often works through lives that appear simple, unassuming, and quietly faithful. Through this connection, the birth of Jesus emerges not as an isolated miracle, but as the culmination of a long-standing narrative written into the fabric of her people's history. The promises once spoken to David, echoed in the words of the prophets, and carried through centuries of waiting find their living fulfillment in the child she brings into the world. Mary becomes the vessel through which ancient hope takes on flesh, and her presence throughout Jesus' life from his earliest days to the final moments at the cross shows a steadfastness that mirrors the endurance of those promises. Her journey, which begins with youthful courage and unfolds through mystery, sorrow, and unwavering devotion, becomes a testament to how divine purpose is often carried forward by those who simply choose to trust. In the end, the silence surrounding her final years does not diminish her role. It completes it. Her story fades not because it loses importance, but because it has already accomplished what it set out to do. She stands as the bridge between the old covenants and the new, between the prophetic past and the unfolding future, offering a life shaped not by power or acclaim, but by faith lived with constancy and love. Her presence in the earliest Christian community, though largely unrecorded, would have been a steady reminder of everything they had witnessed and everything they hoped to build. Through her, the promises to David are no longer distant words but a lived reality, embodied in her quiet strength and her willingness to embrace a path she could not fully see. As we close this journey through Mary's life, a life marked by resilience, tenderness, and a courage that shaped the course of history, thank you for spending this time reflecting on her story. If this exploration has brought you insight, inspiration, or a deeper sense of connection to these ancient narratives, I invite you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join me for future stories that continue to illuminate the lives behind the moments that changed the world.